Hello and welcome to another episode of Spotlight Sessions from AMP Talent Group. I'm your host, Rosie Ferguson, and this week we're diving deep into the world of voiceover. And we have an industry titan joining us, Kim Hurdon of KH Casting and Voice Direction. A casting and voice director with over 30 years of experience, you may have heard Kim referred to as the Queen of Voice. She is one of Canada's most sought-after directors, casting and providing voice direction for animation, commercials, video games. Kim's credits include so many shows and games you know and love. Blue's Clues, Magic School Bus, Caillou, Ranger Rob, Far Cry 6, Warframe. And Kim is currently working on many gaming franchises and animated series, including Star Wars Outlaws and the reboot of the Barney franchise. She's also a judge for the Daytime Emmys for several animation categories, and she is the executive manager of On the Mic Training, which is North America's only accredited voiceover school offering a 6-month diploma program. We are so thrilled to have her with us today. Kim, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Let's get started. Tell us how you got started in the industry. How did you become the Queen of Voice?
Wow. Okay. See, now that you said that, dun, dun, dun. It certainly did not start off that way. So I answered an ad back in the day in the newspaper. Someone looking for a receptionist at a music house, at an audio house, who mostly, if my memory serves, they mostly did commercial work at the time. So I was a receptionist there and was there for about a year. And then the casting person left and went to another place. And on the way out the door, she said, I think Kim might be good at this. And I was like, what? Me?
Wow.
What? Oh my God. Okay. So I got trained up and then here I am.
So did you feel when you were starting on your journey, did you feel like this is a fit? This is something I really enjoy doing. This is something I am good at.
Yes. I did, like right away. And so she was right. And that was Karen Gora back in the day. Yeah. Thank you. I love listening to voices and audio and always had. And I was one of those crazy people that would say, oh, you know who that is? I think that's a celebrity on that commercial. So I'd always sort of, had that sort of vibe to my world. And so, I think.
That's so cool. We when we introduced you, mentioned some of the shows that you have cast voices in so many projects. When you turn on TV, when you're playing video games, there's so many voices that you have chosen, that you have picked out and you have selected. Can you tell us a bit about that? Some of the movies and productions that we would recognize that you've cast the voices in.
Sure. Well, I mean, you said a lot of them right out of the gate on the intro. So movies, not so much. And it took a long time. We just cast, and I'm still NDA'd, our first animated feature.
Wow.
So that'll be coming out, I would imagine, sometime next year. Very exciting.
Congratulations. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
That's a big
I know.
Deal.
So other than that, it's, as you said, it's been mostly animation, obviously commercial, but as far as bigger projects go, animation and gaming. And those big titles like the Far Cries and Warframe is a big one. And as you said, Star Wars, and working on Avatar right now as well.
Wow.
And then some other stuff that I can't talk about because NDAs. Barney and a Paw Patrol spinoff called Rubble and Crew. So just tons of stuff. As you said, lots of things.
That's so exciting. And in this series, we have spoken to a lot of casting directors for film and television and commercials. So it's really exciting to talk to you with a focus on voice. And for our listeners that are curious about learning more about voice acting, whether they're just starting out or if they've been in the industry a while, can you give us an idea, as someone who has done this for so long and who is so sought after in the industry, what qualities do you look for when you're casting voice actors for different projects? And can you tell us a bit about how you match the right voice to a particular role?
That's a tough one because it depends on what the client's looking for. So they will send us specs. And then I can tell you sort of about the casting process, if you will. But what we're listening for really is whatever fits the spec. So if it's a commercial, usually for commercial casting, they're very specific. which you might not think, even more so than animation and gaming. And they stick with that spec and follow it through. For animation, things could come up as surprises. So it might be something that an actor has delivered that they weren't expecting. And they're like, oh, I didn't think of that for that character. That's kind of funny. And so that might send them off on a tangent as well. And then for gaming, they have been and continue to be very specific about inclusivity. So whatever ethnicity or sexual proclivity or gender the character is, they want to cast that authentically. And they've been doing that for a very long time, longer than other genres. So that's very cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
When you are auditioning, looking for a certain voice, can you walk us through the audition process and maybe tell us a little bit about if an actor is preparing to audition for you, what you look for and how best actors can prepare and stand out?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? I know. That's the age-old question. How can I get booked, essentially, is what you're asking.
Yeah, pretty much. Just slipped it in there,
Okay. Yeah, why not? Again, it depends on the genre. So if it is commercial, if it's a commercial casting, so we tend to put our specs out to all of the agents using Casting Workbook. And so it'll depend on where the client is looking. Do they want someone with a home studio they want to record from there?
Right.
Will they, because that's happened during COVID.
Sure.
Do they want them to come into the studio? So then we have to concentrate just on the GTA. And so they're specific in that way. And as I said, they follow that through to the end. So we may ask for self-tapes. We may want to see people on Zoom. We are not doing any longer, although it may move there at some point, back in the studio, because people have just found that when you're Zooming, it's pretty okay. I mean, so we do a lot of our stuff sort of, I'm going to say, air quote, in person on Zoom.
Right.
So we will direct through Zoom. If it's animation, again, depends on where the client wants us to go. We could cast in the States. We could cast across Canada. Depends on what the role is and what they're looking for. And again, we'll generally, if it's animation, put out all across Canada and just say to all the agents, whomever you have that you feel meets the spec or could do a good job with this character, submit them. And then we will sift through them. So we've got at our place, probably about 7 casting and voice directors. Mm-hmm. And so we'll have at least 2 or 3 listen to each role and sort of narrow it down. And we've got this awesome sort of, blah, 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 I don't know, it's a technical thing, a blah, blah, blah on the back end that will sort all of that for us. So we give them a 1, 2, or a 3, and we write comments, and then it sifts through them and sort of the top, all the people that have 1s come to the top.
Right. And
then I'll narrow that down in a very Simon Cowley kind of way, only really nice. He's nice now.
You seem much nicer though.
Thank you. So then we'll narrow that down for our client and just submit probably so we could start with 500, and then I'm winnowing that down to maybe our top 20, and then submitting that to client. And then we will have Zoom auditions after that, where they're coming in then based on their self-tape, and they're auditioning live with us. And the same with gaming, the same thing will happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you are just thinking about, because I've been seeing a lot of stuff online in terms of acting, like, voice acting. This is such a good thing to get into, actors. It's a great way to make money, and, all sorts of stuff about how to get started and the best way to get started. As someone who knows better than anyone the voice acting, the challenges of it and the talent required, what would you tell people that are new, and how would you suggest that they get started? Like, what should you be thinking about?
If you're brand new to acting, or if you're brand new to voice?
If you're brand new to voice, if you're thinking about getting into voice acting is something you would like to try, but maybe you've worked as a performer before.
Right. Okay. This is a big one, because I find this often when people are submitting self-tapes, and I know of them, and I've seen them maybe on camera or film and TV, and they submit, and this is basically speaking to animation, but they submit without any knowledge of the genre,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
I mean, they've probably seen cartoons, but figuring out what each genre asks for, because they're very different, as you can imagine, going from all the way from audiobooks to dubbing to video games or whatever it is. And even within animation, there are different, there's sort of preschool and then there's adult. So everything in between, figuring out what the genre asks for and knowing how to audition for that energy level in animation in particular. Because what is sent back often is a really good film audition.
Got it.
And of course, they're used to sort of with being within the frame. And so thinking in that way and not gesticulating and not getting big. And in animation, it's the exact opposite. We want you to bust right out of the frame and it feels wrong to actors. They're like, this is no way she wants it this big. Yes, I do. Bigger, bigger.
Okay.
It's for kids. Yeah. So figuring that out and in doing that, taking classes.
Of course.
So not only, watching them, but taking classes, because it's very eye-opening, as I said, to a film and TV performer or even a theater performer, like, whoa, I'm allowed to do this? Yeah, you are. We want you to, make all the sounds falling down the stairs and then, all that, like we want all of that color.
Amazing.
They're just not used to using their voice in that way.
Of course.
Yeah.
So that's a really big difference. You mentioned classes, Kim, and I've listened to you've been on so many podcasts, and I've listened to so many interviews with you, and you're so inspiring to listen to. And you were talking about the importance of coaching sessions, and tell us about on the mic training, because I thought it was really fascinating that there's just one accredited program that you can take. I didn't know about it. So if you could tell us about it, that would be great. And also the importance of voice classes and coaching sessions, especially for someone new to voice acting that wants to embark on it.
Sure. So speaking to the school, that's actually why I hooked up with them. That sounds weird, but you get what I'm saying. So because I thought, well, maybe I'll start to, push into that area and into the academia of VO. And then I found them when I sort of researched, full-time program and accreditation, and they're the only one. So I started to speak to the owners and we sort of, as I said, joined forces, because what often happens, and the same thing happens with on camera as well, it's just that there's far more classes.
Yes.
In that area. If you start into voiceover, the first time you are doing something is when you get booked to do it, which is frightening. So doing a dubbing session and walking in and going, I don't know what I'm doing and I have to fake it, like, ew. And so beyond that, like things like dubbing, where it's very specific and very technical, and depending on what method they're using, could be Rhythmaband, it could be, the words sort of appearing on the screen, and as soon as they hit the mark, that's when you are, or it could just be you're matching, lip flap, that sort of thing. So that for dubbing, but then also all of the genres you get to experience, as I said earlier, all the way from audiobooks to gaming to dubbing to, they have classes for like how to get an agent, how to approach an agent, how to get your website going, what you need technically. And they have part-time classes, which happen in the evenings. And then as you spoke to, there's a diploma program. So it's a 6-month intensive program where I want to say, and I could be wrong, but I think I'm right, it's 480 hours of classroom. So it's 3 or 4 hours a day, and everything from voice and movement to everything in between that to, as I said, audiobooks and dubbing and narration and all the stuff. And you get to experience a whole bunch of different instructors that are industry professionals, which is kind of fantastic too.
Yes.
And then at the end of that, we still check in with you as far as accountability groups go. But there's a big showcase at the end where I invite a whole bunch of agents in and people get signed. It's kind of cool.
Wow. That's incredible.
I know. Right.
And how amazing for you to see people that have been working and growing and then achieving that success. I mean, that's pretty fulfilling, I would imagine.
That's it. Well, and because agents are signing them because they do have all of that knowledge now. So they don't have any issue. Yep, we can send you out and we know you're going to be great.
It's such what you spoke about is really interesting to me, that often the first time when you're booked for something as a voice actor, it might be the first time you're doing it. And, we wouldn't really do anything else like that. It makes me think of my time in radio. I worked in radio for a long time. And I remember when I first started, part of the job of doing radio is recording liners and teasers and voicing, the station would sell an ad and you're voicing the ad. And all of a sudden I'm voicing commercials, and no one ever really taught me how to do it. And I'm like, I know there's an art to this. Like, it isn't just reading. And so you try and you do your best. But I even remember at the time thinking, gosh, I really wish someone had taught me how to do this, because I'm sure it would have been a lot better.
That's it. But obviously you're successful. So way to go. Without the training, you figured it out.
I figured it out. Yeah.
Right. But you don't want to be in that position. Exactly. Like, I've been in that position. Who wants to walk in and sort of fake it?
No, exactly. And that's the thing. Feeling of faking it is it's nerve wracking. And so just you that's a really, really good point. Well, that's amazing. And so when you're seeing people getting signed, and then I imagine too, when they're now preparing their tapes, they're just at a whole other level than everyone else who's submitting tapes to auditions.
That's it. Exactly. And so, as you said earlier, getting that coaching, or in this case, classroom sort of direction, it all of a sudden you're, that's the energy I need to, okay, cool. So, and I'm sure you've experienced this, actors now, because of COVID, mostly, are working in a bubble when they're auditioning. They don't have any direction. They're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it sticks. And, I've seen that enough where I see the same people submitting over and over again, and they're not changing what they're doing, and they're not getting booked. So just even taking one class, if it's a genre that you want to enter into, just again, to figure out what the ask is for that genre. It's so important, especially in voiceover, because it's so different depending on what it is. Gaming, there's like gaming, it's just the amount of lines they have to do and just to move through them. And what does it sound like when you get stabbed in the neck and choke on your own blood or something? It's just like, it's a whole different thing than audiobooks. Do you know what I mean? It's just like
100%. Well, when I was on your website, which is amazing, just it has all the incredible work you've done, and I clicked on one of the gaming, I think it was Avatar, and this woman's voice, it just strikes you right away. This woman's voice comes out narrating the beginning of the game. Yeah. And her voice is it's strong and clear and gorgeous, and you immediately feel what you're supposed to be feeling. And it's like, wow. Can you actually tell us about some of your favorite voices, like some of the favorite auditions you've had, the people that really stood out to you, if you have any examples?
For auditions, there was a guy, this is like a lame story, but to me it was like, where he's a film and television actor, and he moved into, I won't say his name because why, and he moved into voiceover, and first off started doing commercial, and he's fairly well known in Canada, and he didn't understand commercial stuff at first, so he sort of eschewed it, and he would come in and he'd do a couple of reads and then he'd leave, and then it started to intrigue him. Like, oh, this is different. I thought you just sort of talked on the mic and so directing him over the years, then he started to say, can I give you another one? Or he would leave and then come back and say, I thought of something. I'm like, oh, he's hooked now.
So he's thinking of ways to direct himself.
That's it. And I had him in for a gaming audition, which is much more in his wheelhouse, because then it's far, far more like film and TV than any other genre of voiceover.
Sure.
And he blew me away.
Wow.
Because he just owned the room. And I know that's an easy thing to say, well, just own the room. But he was so confident in his choice in the character, and he didn't care if he was taking longer than everybody else. And that's the way that So he didn't feel rushed. He wasn't trying to please me. I was just, whoa, that's awesome. And he booked it, obviously, because it
Amazing.
was just it was just far above anything anyone else did. Like, it was just like, that's an audition.
Oh,
And then,
that's so satisfying.
right? I know.
So satisfying.
And it was literally that. It was that he had the confidence, I think, especially, as I said, in that genre, to just go, oh yeah, I know this. I know this character. I know what to do. And it was honestly pacing. It was the fact that he didn't feel rushed at all.
Right.
He was just going to do what he was going to do, which was fantastic. And for animation, I had a guy who books all the time. And the spec went out and they were looking for the examples. I don't remember what the show was, but the examples that they used, the references were all British. And so everyone was submitting British. And he did a couple of things. I think he sent me 2 or 3 takes. One wasn't, and then the other 2 were. And of course, he got narrowed down. Now we're at the Zoom auditions with the client. And we're about the 3rd person in, and then we have him in. And they had the client said in between, oh, everyone's doing British. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what the references were. Like, what is happening? And so I sort of said, well, well, the next fellow in did something else. So, and he very intuitively, when they said, is there anything else that you wanted to do? He said, well, I bet you everyone's doing British. So I'm going to do something else. And he did, and he got booked doing something else that they, as I said earlier, they didn't have in mind at all. So those are 2 that were outstanding to me just throughout the years. Yeah.
And how remarkable, like, his confidence to do that, to say, I'm going to try something else. That you have to have confidence and be sure of yourself. Kim,
you absolutely do. Yeah.
I read so much about casting directors, how much they love. I mean, you're the queen of voice, and people love working with you. You get that name for a reason. And I've read so much about how casting directors, they love working with you because you are able to get the best performances out of actors when we're talking about voice direction once the actor is cast. And there was some examples, saying when you're working with children, getting out of kids, like these remarkable performances. Can you tell us a bit about that? How do you do that? Like, how do you coax out of maybe an actor who's shy or new the best performance, the performance that the casting people want, that the production wants?
That's a tough one, because I don't have an idea going in.
Okay.
And maybe that's why it's good. So it completely, for me, depends on the actor. And as you said, they could be shy. It could be their first production. They could be 4 years old, or all the way up to 80. And it could be their first job. So I really feel it out and see what they like. Some actors take longer. Some want more detail about what's happening in the scene. What's the context? What's going on? Some people just come in and bang it out. And they know, and they live it, and they're in it. So again, it depends on so many factors. If it's a 4-year-old, it could be, because I'm working with a girl right now who it's her first time she's done anything, and she doesn't know what she's doing, and she can't read. So, right? So I start off by kind of giving her line reads. But now we're far enough into the production so that I want to know what she wants to do. And so will she bring anything to it? Because a kid is going to do a read that I, as an adult, have no concept of, because it's just so crazy or so fresh or so, right? And so the line reading I'm going to give her isn't going to be the way she may read it. So I'll say the line and say, "Kid, do you remember it? Do you remember? You ready to do it? Okay. Are you ready? Here we go. We're going to do it." And so just making it really fun and exciting for her.
Yep.
And allowing her to be creative within the process, so that I'm not sucking all the fun out of the room and just trying to cookie cutter the whole thing. And then on the other side of it, being able to step aside and not over direct someone if they have it. Like, it's cool. So my ego's not involved. I'm good. I don't have to prove to anybody that, and try to put my stamp on something. So, and really, again, it's it's kind of up to the actor for me. So it's different for everybody. That's not a good answer, but that's my answer.
No, that's actually amazing. Just even the point of how you step back and let the actor perform. And I imagine you probably hear maybe something you didn't expect all the time, but that maybe fits the role perfectly. So
that's it. Well, because they're the creative people. They were hired for a reason. So who am I to stand in the way of their greatness, right? It's just, let's hear what you got. Give me a couple of variations and whoa, was not expecting take C. That's crazy. I love it.
And when you've got it, right? Like, when you hear it, that this is it. Like, this is the right take.
Yeah. Well, or it could be, wow, you just gave me 3 reads on that line and I could choose any one of those. So I may alt a couple of them because I have a preference, but maybe the editor is going to like a different one for whatever his purpose is, or the showrunner, or you never know. Yeah, it's weird.
So cool. Just getting back a little bit to starting out again in auditions and self-tapes, because it's so fascinating listening to you talk about the casting process and direction. It's you can talk to you for forever about it. It's so interesting. Let's talk about equipment, because I think this comes up a lot. If you are just starting out and you want to have make a self-tape, do an audition that sounds professional and it's good, how do you recommend people even start out if they haven't set themselves up before with a microphone or anything like that?
You don't. There's going to be different opinions here, so I'm just going to tell you mine.
Yep.
You don't have to have an awesome microphone and a whole setup at home to start off. You do not. As long as what you're sending me sounds good. It doesn't have to be like a professional studio quality, high grade, awesome thing. But we have people sending in using I'm getting my iPhone, using their iPhones still. Okay. And they're getting booked from that. One thing I learned over COVID, here's a little tip. If you're going to send in something using your iPhone, don't speak into the speaker. So I'm holding it up to my mouth and speaking directly into it, because that's almost like speaking into a microphone without a pop screen. They're not designed to, so do it sideways, the way that the phone's designed.
Oh, that's such a good tip.
Yeah, I know that. And I learned that over COVID because my IT guy said, well, and I was like, oh, that didn't even occur to me. So if you're starting off, just make sure that you could be in your car. You could have a blanket over your head, so it's a little bit deadened.
Okay.
Again, you can also, if you want to invest a little money, get a USB mic and just plug that into your laptop and use whatever recording. Some people use the basic, whatever comes with the computer itself. Because again, I don't need you to give me a profesh thing. I just need to hear what you sound like without a lot of distraction, a lot of echo, dogs barking in the background. Like, try not to have that happen. Because some people start off and they're like, oh, I love doing this, and I'm going to buy all the things, and I'm going to set a booth up in my house.
Yes.
Don't do that. Just start off small, and as your career grows and you start to accumulate spots and money and games, and your resume grows, then you can start adding to your demo from that and start adding to your equipment. So the issue is people try to get a really awesome mic and then they aren't soundproofed. So that does the opposite. So now you've got such a good mic that I'm hearing your fridge downstairs.
You're in the air conditioning. You're hearing like every single thing.
Because you haven't created a soundproof environment. So the environment's almost more important than the mic itself. But again, you can take a class and somebody will help you with your DAW and your digital audio workstation. So you could be using Pro Tools or Adobe or whatever means you need. And they'll talk to you about soundproofing and how to do that cheaply. And so again, there's lots of information out there. Just don't go big too early, because it's not worth it.
That's really great advice. And I think the point you made, it's, you just need to hear what you sound like. So if you're starting off, don't go overboard. Just make sure you're clear. And I love that tip about the iPhone. That just makes so much sense.
Right? I know.
Makes so much sense.
Yes. Well, and because when you get booked, you're going to go into a recording studio anyway if you don't have something at home. So who cares? Then you're fine. So yeah, just get booked.
Nope, that makes sense. Just get booked. Well, and speaking of getting booked, just as we start to wrap things up, the voiceover industry has grown so much, and I mean all the incredible projects that you've worked on. Tell us a little bit about the opportunities that are out there. If you are, a voice actor and you're thinking, okay, what could I even audition for? Of course, there's the gaming series and animation, but you mentioned audiobooks. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what potential there is out there for work?
Sure. So beyond what your agent is going to get you, is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So again, always talk to your agent, because they could be doing things behind the scenes that you don't know about, and you're doing something that's counter to what they're doing. So make sure that if you're going to go out on your own and search for work, that you're letting them know that as well.
Okay.
I will often tell people that Clubhouse, I don't know if you're on it or not,
yes.
It has so much. It's basically built for voiceover because it's audio only.
Okay, of course, that makes sense.
So there are so many voiceover groups there. One of the instructors that we have on the mic actually was in an audiobook voiceover group and talking, and a client contacted her right after that and said, "Oh, I've got 4 books that we need," and she was like, "Oh, okay."
Wow, so, that's amazing.
Yeah. So get on those, because there are lots of. I'm doing one tonight actually on the voiceover roundtable. And that's a Canadian voiceover group, if you will.
Yep.
Join that, because casting people sit in, they'll have you up on the stage. You can do a read for them. And so it's not just information. You also get to meet casting people and meet and the voiceover industry above all others. Now, granted, I am, maybe a little, I know.
You're the queen.
But
You're
they're
the queen.
so supportive and so welcoming, and they'll help you and give you tips, and it's not as competitive as other areas. So yes. So that audiobooks for sure is a big one that's growing. And gaming, as you can imagine, this is a stat that I throw around every once in a while, but in 2020, gaming made 8 times as much as movies. So movies in 2020 made about 19 billion. Gaming made 160 billion. So if any area is boom exploding, it's gaming. So get in there, get involved. There's indie studios that look for voices all the time. I would follow them. I would follow on socials, follow casting people, because they're putting stuff out. They're putting auditions out on socials, because everything, as I said earlier, we're looking sometimes for wheelchair users because the character is a wheelchair user, things like that. And so we're going beyond
authentic.
The normal scope of casting. Exactly. So as many different social groups as you can join, do it, because you never know.
That's incredible. I'm so glad you mentioned Clubhouse, because it's such a good point. Everything it's voices, it's voices, and it's talking. And I love the fact about it being a supportive community, because I think a lot of times it can be very overwhelming, and you do want to you do want to learn more, and you want to reach out, but sometimes you just don't know how, and it's intimidating. So hearing what you say that about the Clubhouse community and just it being warm and supportive. I think maybe if you had trepidation about maybe diving in there, I think that's really great to hear. So thank you. Thank you for that, for those tips. Kim, before we wrap things up, is there anything that you could share with our listeners, any lessons you've learned throughout your career that aspiring voice actors could maybe benefit from?
Yes, to sum up, I will give you two little nuggets.
Okay.
The first is if you're getting information about auditions, read the whole thing.
Okay.
The whole thing, and follow the directions. And I know that sounds crazy and way too detaily, but don't give me any reason to put your audition to the side if it's not labeled properly. So I don't know who you are, or it's not slated the way I want it slated. It's because, again, the enormity of the auditions that we're listening to now, it may be 500. I'll go, no, don't have time. No. So don't give me that opportunity. Follow the directions, follow the instructions. And I think I said this earlier, but watch or listen to whatever genre you're interested in
Right.
and getting into. So important. If you want to do audiobooks, listen to freaking audiobooks so that you know what the sound of that is. If it's narration, if it's corporate narration, listen to that. Listen to a channel and hear what's the voice of the History Channel sound like. Or if it's gaming, if it's a shoot 'em up game, what does that sound like? What does an NPC sound like in that game? Like the background performers, because there's an awful lot of work in NPCs.
Sure. So watch the game, play the game, listen. Yes.
Yeah. And you can just go on YouTube and watch playthrough videos. You don't have to necessarily play it, but make sure you listen to the genre. Yeah.
Common sense. That is that makes so much sense. Kim, this has been amazing. Your tips and advice it's just I'm listening and just I'm so excited for everyone to hear this, because what you have offered has been so helpful and terrific. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. Yay, blast. Love it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I've been speaking with Kim Hurdon. You can learn more about KH Casting and Kim's projects at khcasting.com and on Instagram at khvoice. For details on voiceover classes and coaching sessions at On the Mic Training, visit onthemictraining.com. Thanks for spending time with us today on AMP Talent Group Spotlight Sessions. I'm Rosie Ferguson. Bye for now.